Welcome to the Sustainable Travel Podcast. I'm Emma, your host from That Travel. This is a podcast that interviews a range of different travelers from different backgrounds to see what sustainable travel means to them. I am here today with Mahin, who is the co-founder of CarbonWise Pakistan. CarbonWise is Pakistan's first carbon footprint calculator, and today, amongst other things, we'll be talking about the importance of educating children about climate change. Super exciting. Hi, Mahin.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I love what you do. It's an amazing mission.
Likewise, I love your page and I love how you clip different sorts of information and put it out there. I think it's so informative and I think it's so interesting to see how everyone around the world is, playing their part. And that's what I think climate change is all about because it's something that is affecting everyone in one way or the other. And it has no visas and no passports. And until unless we all don't become one community and until unless we all don't come together, this problem, won't be solved because I feel like in a lot of places we are still operating in silos, but climate change is a problem that needs all of us to come together in a very integrated manner.
100%. I mean, no better time to spread this message because we're recording this on Earth Day, right? So it's like
Yeah.
perfect timing. I fully agree with you. I think that if we're gonna solve this problem, we do need to all work together. We can't be thinking, I mean, it's very difficult because obviously around the world people have different privileges, have different like things that are going on. So it's very easy to sort of say, well, my situation's different and I need to do this for me, but we should all be kind of coming together. So yeah, I love that message. So tell us a little bit about you, and how you kind of became interested in sustainability and what it is that you're doing now.
So I do three things. One of the things that I do is that I have my own carbon footprint calculator, and that calculator basically measures the impact of an individual. So you can download it on your app. It's just like a health app or a health tracker. It basically tracks your carbon footprint. Then that app basically allows you to plant trees as well. And we're sort of getting different sustainable companies on board in Pakistan because this is a very forward concept for Pakistan, and it's also a very new concept for Pakistan. So it's taking us a bit of time to explain to people what this really is about. But the end goal is to get different communities on board and to get different companies who are working in the green sector on board, so that there's this one app and one place where people can go and they can reduce your carbon footprint. They know what their footprint is, but then they also have a solution to the footprint because we often talk about companies and we talk about scope 1 2 3 emissions, but we forget that companies are made of individuals. So that's why we're trying to focus on, of course, like companies are emitting way more than individuals, if you talk about it in that manner. But I think individual behavior is also extremely pertinent to cater for. So
Mm.
that's one of the things that I do. And then we do active plantations as well. And we sort of work with kids and schools. And then the third thing that I do is that I work with the World Bank also as a consultant on climate change initiatives. And then I have my page. It's all about climate journalism. It's all about what's happening around the world when it comes to climate change and also what's happening, especially in Pakistan, because I come from Pakistan and I come from Lahore, which is affected by smog, and it's unfortunately one of the most polluted cities in the world. And Pakistan is also unfortunately one of the most polluted countries in the world. So we're quite literally, experiencing what's happening in terms of climate change. It's very visible for us. It's happening now, and we're actually, seeing the repercussions of it because Pakistan does not emit so much, but it's one of the most vulnerable countries, when it comes to climate change. And whether it's the smog in Lahore, it's a water scarcity in Balochistan, or floods across Sindh and Punjab, we're seeing the impacts like literally firsthand. I think I'm still privileged enough, and I'm really, really privileged because um, I live in a city and I come from a strata which is not impacted that much by climate change because we still have resources. There are people who are getting impacted in an unfair manner, in an inequitable manner. So if climate change is not kind, it affects everyone in a different manner. Um,
Yeah.
and as I mentioned before as well, that we all need to come together and amplify our voices
Yeah.
when it comes to that.
Like a form of climate injustice, I suppose. Like
Exactly.
it's not their fault, but unfortunately they're one of the worst affected, and that's really it's super important. I mean, as you said, like you've got this carbon footprint for Pakistan. It would be great to see the rest of the world using that, to be honest. It would be like if it could go global, I'm sure that would be like the ultimate dream, right?
That would be, but Actually, the carbon footprint calculator is available in a lot of countries. Countries like the US or countries like UK,
Mhm.
they already have these calculators, and they already have apps like these. For us, I think why we really wanted to create a calculator was because in the global south there is lack of accountability within the citizens as well. So
Okay.
that was, one of the major factors why we wanted to create an app. We wanted to inculcate this, accountability factor within people, within individuals. And there was a lot of gap in terms of the fact that people actually didn't feel accountable for what they were doing, and they didn't know a lot about climate change also per se. This concept of climate, even though Pakistan has been suffering since a lot of years, but now the concept and overall everything is gaining traction when it comes to climate change, especially because of, we face the floods every year. And then there's also the loss and damage discussion that happens in Pakistan has been, a major part of it. And now, as I mentioned before, we're seeing firsthand smog, and, it's just getting so bad that now we are more focused and more people are talking about climate change now
Yeah, that's
before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really, really cool. Like as you said, it's a very different problem in the global south versus the global north. Like obviously the
Of
global
course.
north is using resources at like a rate of knots compared to the global south. But as you
Yeah.
say, like everybody plays their part. So if there's no accountability from people like individuals, then it's really important to help them play their part, however, um, comparatively small that may be to other people. Like I think it's really important that we all take some role in that. So I love that. I love what you're doing. And the second thing you mentioned, so you've got the app, you're working with kids, and what was the third one? Sorry.
So I also work as a consultant, like for the World Bank. I work on climate change initiatives, and I also work with the disaster risk management sector. So that's what I do with the World Bank. And currently, we're figuring out an incentivization system for the
Mhm.
citizens in different cities of Pakistan, and we're working on carbon credits because Pakistan, although does have guidelines, but there's a long way to go for Pakistan. When it comes to the legal policies and the
Yeah.
regulations.
Yeah, like regulations from the government. That's amazing. So you are a very busy person.
I know. I know.
You have your hands very full. I love that. So, I mean, today we're going to be talking about kind of the second point, like what you're doing with kids, I guess.
Kids.
I think this is super important. For me, we all kind of play this role, but often you do see like the generation after coming up and rejecting what the generation before has said, I suppose. So I feel like for me, the education and the understanding of why is very important. But tell us a little bit about that kind of component of it, like why you started doing it and just like why you feel it's important as well.
Okay. So why I started working in climate change was because of the fact that, actually I was in London,
Okay.
and so I was working with this energy publication company. And that was sort of my first step into like the climate change sector. I had no idea about, you know, energy and all these concepts because it's something very new to me.
Hmm.
But of course, like I hail from a region that is affected by climate change. So that is something that was ingrained within me. And I knew that my country was going through a lot of crisis and how vulnerable it is. So when I was working in London in the energy company, energy publication company, I realized that why am I not making a difference back home? Like, why am I not taking what I'm learning here back home? And, I should give it a shot. So that was one of the reasons why I actually, got convinced to move back home as well. And that was actually one of the reasons also why I decided to stay in this field, and I decided to explore it further.
Hmm.
Um, what pulled me deeply was also realizing how communities most affected often have the least access to, information, resources, or even, the decision-making spaces. So I actually did start with, the youth-led workshops. Then obviously I moved to a broader advocacy level because I think in today's day and age, if you have to take advantage of social media,
Yeah.
um, it's so important to leverage the power of social media.
Yeah.
And so now my work includes climate education program for schools, and the storytelling reels that I do, and designing sustainability campaigns, in terms of the app and in broader perspective as well. Why I choose to focus on kids, I think is because Pakistan is one of the youngest countries.
Really?
Yes, of course. We have one of the youngest population.
Wow.
We have so many youngsters, and it is the youngsters who are going to, bring out the change. It's not the other generations that are going to bring out the change. It's important because, young people in Pakistan are growing up in the most climate vulnerable generation ever. But we don't want them to feel only fear, we want them to feel the urgency, and we want them to feel that they can make an impact and they can make a difference. They can do something about it, they can speak up, and they can organize. And climate education is a tool of empowerment. When you feel empowered, you take action, you feel confident. And especially in countries like ours, where the system, often at times fails to protect the most vulnerable. So I think it's extremely important to inculcate that accountability in them. And of course, it's also really important to teach kids at an early age, because at that age, their habits are being formed.
Yeah.
And when their habits are being formed, when they grow up, they're mostly going to grow up with those habits and with those values and with that understanding. I would say that I'm still at an age now where my habits have become a bit, stringent. So you can't really, inculcate those. You can't mold me, or you can't mold my habits. But within kids, you can literally mold kids, and you can, inculcate these extremely important things. Because when I was growing up, climate change wasn't given enough importance.
Mm.
It's now a few years ago that climate change started affecting us so much, even though it affected us always, but now we can visibly see it, so people are taking it more seriously. And
Mm.
then if I talk about my parents generation, if I tell them to switch and change their habits, they will straight
Impossible.
up say no, like that's
Yeah.
not possible.
Yeah, with our parents, it's like so hard, and I see it. It's interesting. Like just to draw on what you said, like when I was a kid, because I reckon we're like similar ages. Or you might be a bit younger than me, but like similar. And when I was a kid, I was told like recycle, compost, but no one ever explained why. It was just like, oh,
Yeah.
just do it, you know. But with my parents' generation, like going back further, they were the ones who had to learn that kind of thing from the media and. Then going even further back, like my grandma's generation, she has a lot of like naturally sustainable habits. Like she'll reuse everything she's got, she fixes everything, she'll buy like as little as she possibly can. And we had this generation, I'm not sure about in other places, but certainly in the UK, who were very thrifty, like mainly because of the Second World War. Like they were really trying to conserve what they had. And I feel that in our parents' generation, it just kind of went like boom. And especially in the UK in the global north, they suddenly had this like liberty where they could just buy whatever they wanted. They could like have this freedom. And it's really hard to change those habits. Like even my mum, when she wants to do something nice for me, she'll buy me something. She'll get me a present. Or like if she, you know, if she has to go out and clean something, she just goes out, she buys it. It's all about convenience for her. And it's like now our generation is kind of trying to bring that back and be like, well, no, no, we don't always need it. So you're right, like it is really hard to change habits and turn things around in that way.
Of course. And also, the thing with the kids is that, kids of today, in many countries, and especially in Pakistan, they're just not about it's just not about teaching them the climate facts. They come up with brilliant questions that we actually stop for a second, and we're also stunned, because I sometimes wonder that, oh my god, this is something that I wouldn't be thinking at this age.
Really?
They explore questions like, why is my city so hot now, or why is the air so hard to breathe, or where does our water come from, or who controls it, and why are people not equally impacted by climate change? At their age, I was just thinking about food and TV, so I wasn't thinking about these things.
Yeah.
So because of the interactive system that schools are using now, and because schools are now inculcating these concepts within the kids,
Yeah.
they're making them make presentations. They're telling them to make posters about it, be creative about it, come with innovative solutions. And so when the smog crisis happened in Lahore, especially, all the schools were closed.
Mm.
So imagine that kids could not go to school because of air pollution. So that's something that's impacting them directly, mentally and physically as well.
Mm.
And then another thing was that the parks were also closed. So imagine how hard it is for you to explain to a child that, you can't go outside to play even. And this is the most normal thing ever, that you go outside and you play in parks.
Yeah.
But they couldn't do that either. So they're like, we are adults, right? So we understand what's happening and it's easier for us to understand. But it's quite hard explaining to a kid that, okay, your city is so polluted that you can't go to school, you can't meet your friends, and you can't go to the park as well. You just have to be within, your house walls. So
Yeah.
that's something that is very hard to explain to a kid, because his whole routine is disrupted, and like, kids are more sensitive. So they're being impacted by climate change in ways that we weren't impacted. So every generation has their own struggles. But yes,
Yeah.
of course, it's important to start young, and it's important to make their hands dirty. That's why during the plantation we tell them that plant trees, and they have so much fun doing that.
Mm.
The other day I was at a plantation at the school called Aitchison, and some boys were planting trees, and this one of the boys was like, "Oh my God, I'm enjoying this so much that I want to be a gardener when I grow up." I was like, "Oh,
Oh,
amazing!" So it's
yeah.
nice, like, hearing this, and he was just like, "Why didn't you make us do this before? Like, I want to do more plantation activities." And they were having a lot of fun because we make it a point that they, get their hands dirty, and they do activities like sewing and stuff, because till the time you won't make your hands dirty and you won't understand and connect with nature, you won't feel the love for nature. You wouldn't want to preserve it or conserve it. So I think it's very important to formalize a love for nature as well within the kids.
Yeah, the hands-on experience is completely different. Like you don't get the same feeling from reading a book as you would by
Of
just
course.
like sticking your hands in the ground. But what you said about the pollution crisis as well, like psychologically, that's very damaging for children. Like even for an adult to be kind of confined within four walls at any given time. Obviously, it's like the pandemic, isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the same, but in the UK, we weren't really allowed to leave our houses, and a lot of people went like stir crazy. And with a child, like yeah, it's really hard to explain to them like for the next 3 months or whatever, you can't leave your house.
Yes.
Um, it's quite a challenge for them.
It was a challenge for us also, because we couldn't go out. Um, we weren't allowed to go to our offices, so the offices also closed down.
In the hall.
And we were, yes, and we were supposed to work from home. And then after a certain time, the restaurants also were closed. After a certain time, um, all the parks were also closed. Actually, I think parks were closed completely. I think we could just go to like indoor spaces. And so the problem with Lahore is it has a very extreme summer. So we actually look forward to the winter.
Yeah.
Um, and when winter comes, the smog comes in winter. So it was extremely frustrating, because that is a time when everyone likes to sit outdoors, sorry, and enjoy the weather, because quite literally throughout the year, starting from now till August, like, the temperature goes up to 49 or 50. Like, it's so hot
It's
in Lahore.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very frustrating for us as well. And of course, I cannot explain how the cloud used to look like. Have you seen Peaky Blinders?
Yeah, bits of it.
So literally, I'm not, I kid you not, like, if you stepped outside, you would actually think that you were living in that century and
Really.
you're
Like
living in
the
that.
full-on black
The
smog.
full on, yes, full on. It was gray. It looked like a chimney. It was depressing to
Wow.
just wake up. We didn't have any sunshine for a proper, because the smog levels were extremely high,
Mm.
and we did not have proper sunshine for a month and a half. It was
That's
very, very bad. So
dangerous as well. Like breathing it, I'm sure would cause like lung issues for people.
it would, and then that comes brings me back to my point originally, that we are still privileged now because we could afford air purifiers. Again, I'm strictly, and I am so against this, um, this new business that they've started, commercializing air by air purifiers. Clean air is a necessity, but
Obviously,
of course, like, companies took advantage of what was happening in Lahore, and they came up with air purifiers. So again, we could afford like air purifiers, but what about those people who could not? First that, and then the second thing is that we have indoor offices, but there's so many people in Lahore and in Punjab and in Pakistan who have to work outside, who
yeah,
have to
for
work
livelihood.
literally for their livelihood. So what's their fault, right?
Mm.
So it's times like these when you actually, realize that how privileged you are, and it's times like these that you realize that, it's so important to talk about climate change. It's so important to just keep on advocating for these changes, because in reality, people who are getting affected by it the most, um, they don't have an option.
They're the least
And
guilty.
yeah,
Like I was reading the other day because I visited Madagascar a couple of years ago and it was like a beautiful, beautiful country. And apparently they are the fourth most affected country by climate change in the world.
yeah.
But they contribute the least to it. And it's like this climate injustice that we need to be explaining, I think, to children from a young age because children have that inbuilt like justice regulator and they're like, that's not fair. Like they have very simplified versions of justice. Like they're like, you have a bag of sweets, everybody gets a sweet each until the bag is gone. And they understand it like, well, everybody should be the same affected based on what they've put in, right? So if we're telling children like, these people didn't contribute as much, but they are worse affected. I feel like children will want to do something about that. They won't think it's fair.
Of course, I agree with you 100%. And I think that during our times, words like colonialism and words like, other words weren't so common, and these concepts weren't highlighted so much. And
Yeah.
in fact, like the West was glamorized and glorified for whatever it was doing.
Yeah.
But now, the generation that's coming up, and our generation, because of social media, because of awareness, um, we all understand that, a lot of countries were impacted and are still impacted by colonialism and concepts like colonialism, and the whole dilemma, and the whole discussion of global north and global south, how the
Yeah.
global north is polluting and global south is getting affected. So yes, it is extremely unfair, and it's an unfair system, it's an unfair world. And the the thing that we all can do is, we can talk about it,
Yeah.
uh,
Be
and
open
we can
about
do
it.
exactly, and we can do things that are possible for us to do in our individual capacity. And that's what I keep on telling my friends and the family, and whoever asks me, they, oh, why are you working in climate change in Pakistan? Because it's a very forward centric concept in Pakistan. And the I would say that the opportunities are vast over here, because there's so much that you can tap into, because it's a new market over here, but it's a concept that's only understood by a few. And another problem is that our country is only interested in optics.
Mm.
um, and now climate change and sustainability suddenly means finance for everyone, so everyone's streaming into this field without wanting to actually make an impact, right? So when I get a question by my friends or my family, or so many other people, that why don't, because some days I'm really frustrated that, oh my god, like I'm not getting enough work, I'm not getting enough credibility, or I'm not getting enough recognition,
Yeah.
because sustainability and climate change is something that people are not interested in Pakistan, because Pakistan is a country, unfortunately, that is impacted by so many other problems that climate change often takes a back foot. But then, being said that, climate change is quite literally a part of all those problems. The food crisis, the water crisis, it's all happening because of climate change. So until unless they don't put climate change as the heart of all problems, those problems won't be solved. Like,
Yeah.
we're having a massive food crisis, we're having a massive water crisis. Why are we having a massive food crisis? It's because of climate change. It's because of the changing weather patterns. So until unless we don't prioritize it, a change won't come by. So it stands like these, when I get questions that, oh, like, why are you working in this field? And then I tell them, and they're just like, oh, but what's the most that's going to happen? And then I tell them that we all need to make a difference in whatever capacity that we can,
Yeah.
and we should never underestimate the impact of our actions, may it be big or small. You just
Yeah.
need to put it out there, and the rest will happen.
I completely agree. I think that there's so many examples I could give within the climate sphere of people feeling like, well, what I do doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if I take that flight because like all these billionaires are taking private jets. It doesn't
I'm going to
matter.
space.
Sorry.
I'm going to space.
Yeah, and yes, going to space. My God. And it's like they're like, it doesn't matter what I do. I'm a small cog in the machine. And I feel that if we take that attitude, I really feel this, that it's an excuse. You're giving yourself an out and saying like, well, what I do doesn't matter, so I can do whatever I want. And that's not helpful. Like ultimately your actions in that case will be detrimental. Like you are going to do things that are more detrimental because you don't care. Like caring is step one. And I really like resonate with what you said there. I think it's very, very true. We have to take accountability for our individual actions.
I agree 100%. Yeah. That's how a change will come by. And it's a problem that needs no visas, no passports. That's the thing, right? Like we
Yeah.
often think that we can that it's okay, like maybe it won't happen this year or we can ignore this, but it's something that's just going to keep on getting worse and worse,
Yeah.
especially in countries like ours, because we're very vulnerable to it. And right now, we aren't focusing that much on capacity building. There are streams and departments that are focusing on capacity building, but I think more needs to be done. Like right now, Pakistan relies a lot on external funding. So
Mm,
I think we need to come up with internalized solutions, and we need to have our own local, teams and local solutions, because it's too late for external funding now. We need to be our own saviors. And that's something that, everyone keeps on talking about over here, that, we need to stop relying on the West, or we need to stop relying on other countries. Um, we are a small country, but still, we need to do whatever we can in our own capacity.
mm. Yeah, well, we're going to come back to kind of resource building and capacity building a little bit later on. So, yeah, Maha, just building on what you were saying, like when you're talking about that kind of thing, I wonder if maybe you have the same experience. We had another guest on the podcast whose name is Tanaya, and she was coming from Botswana and educating children about like sustainability in Africa. It was actually really similar concept. And what she was saying was a lot of the time she'll apply for funding or for some kind of help, and people will come back and say, yeah, like that sounds great. Like, let us give you training. And she was like, what? Like, I'm a fully trained climate educator. I know all about this stuff. Like, I don't need your training. I need your funding. Do you have like a similar experience in that?
So I think one of the biggest barriers is definitely, systemic neglect. In Pakistan, our national curriculum, it barely scratches the surface when it comes to climate literacy. And teachers are not given the training or the resources also to teach it meaningfully. Climate education is also often treated as an extra rather than a foundational subject.
Mhm.
Also, there's also a big issue around funding, like you mentioned as well. A lot of grassroots educators and youth-led initiatives are doing incredible work, but they're underpaid or they're not paid at all, because um, people still think that we're volunteers,
Mm,
and they still think that climate change is a voluntary subject, and it's voluntary work. And when we go and we tell them that, okay, this is our compensation, or this is the compensation that we're expecting, they often look at us with like glaring eyes. And then we sort of like question them that, if this was someone from the corporate sector, or if this was someone from some other private sector organization, you wouldn't hesitate paying them money, right?
yeah.
Just because we are passionate about this issue, that does not mean that we don't want compensation, because passion will not fund our livelihoods, right?
Mhm.
um, then another thing is that people assume that if you're passionate about the planet, you should work for free.
Yeah.
But that's not sustainability, because we need to support climate educators the same way that we support our um, English teachers or maths teachers, because the work is just as urgent.
Mm,
And also, if we want to build a community of like climate educators, climate consultants, or climate trainees or trainers or whatever, we need to provide them with a proper resource kit, right? And
yeah.
we need to incentivize them. And that's just human nature. Like you incentivize individuals, human beings, they work on incentives and incentivization. And lastly, it's also a perception problem, because climate education is often seen as a elite issue or something.
Mm,
It's seen, especially in Pakistan,
mhm.
it's seen something like foreign. Even though the impacts are felt the hardest right here, so we need to localize the language as well. Another thing with the kids is that a lot of children in Pakistan go to government schools, because the strata that deals with English is really less. most of the strata and most of the kids in Pakistan, they speak in Urdu,
Yeah.
and that's our national language. So we need to nationalize the talk about climate change. We need to make climate stories in Urdu. We need to make climate movies, in Urdu and in English. We need to come up with like climate heroes,
Mm.
so that the kids can resonate with
Mm.
the hero, and they can be like, okay, like I want to do this, or I want to be like this hero, or something of that sort. um, we
Yeah.
need to do storytelling with the kids, and that's something that should be like worked upon, and those are some of the barriers that I feel we're facing. And but during the smog season, the government actually did come up with different cartoon characters that could resonate with the kids, because they wanted to inculcate all of this within the kids as well. So I
Mm.
think storytelling and including this in their curriculum, something extremely pertinent in universities and in schools as well. So
Mm.
they can come up with like innovative solutions and stuff like that.
Like you need creatives almost like who are willing to spread the word in like various different languages. And you're so right when you say, because I was initially wondering when you were saying like a lot of the kids speak Urdu, I was thinking, is she going to say that they should be learning English? Because obviously that's not really fair. It's like difficult for them with the resources. But you're so right. Like people who speak both languages, both and or just one, but know about the issues can like translate and put this kind of artwork and like creativity into this format would be amazing to see.
I agree. And I think the kids, they need to channel their creativity,
Yeah,
Um, they need to put everything that they're thinking onto paper,
yeah,
and that's actually when they learn a lot.
yeah.
They need to do like stimulating activities of coming up with, there could be several things that, because they're getting impacted by climate change, so they should actually put their thoughts onto paper, and they can come up with different posters, and schools can incentivize them that whoever makes the best poster of how our city is being impacted by climate change,
Mm.
we'll give them a prize or something. And that's something when the issue will actually, sit with them
Yeah,
properly. So
yeah,
until,
because incentives
yeah,
work.
exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone works on incentivization, and
Mm.
that's something that they should really focus on. And kids is something the government is trying to actually, inculcate this. And actually, I go to different schools as well to give talks on climate change.
Yeah,
And then, so schools, but that's the thing, right? Schools call us once because it's a trend.
yeah,
So they are pretty interested in reaching out to us that, hey, like, oh, please come and give a talk on climate change and stuff like that. And we go and we interact with the kids, and the discussions are great because the kids are so smart.
yeah.
But what happens after that? It
Mm.
slowly like dies down because why they want to do it is for optics. They
Mm.
just want to put up a picture on social media that, oh my God, we had a climate session today at our school because it's a trending thing, right?
Mm.
So it's something that should be in their curriculum for,
Yes.
a long time. Yeah.
What you said about climate funding is very true, and obviously this plays into the same issue that you're talking about. Like even myself, like I don't do the same level of climate work that you do, but obviously my page on Instagram, my podcast, whatever, like is very focused on sustainability, of which climate plays a big part. And I find that people are like very happy to pay me to promote their products, very happy to pay me to like feature them in a blog and whatnot. But as soon as it comes to just like paying me to talk
Yeah.
about sustainability, they're like, why would you want to be paid for that? And it's like, it's my job, you know, like it's a part of my job. And they kind of feel like you'll come along and do it for free. And they're like, I'll give you exposure. And it's like exposure
Yeah.
is not helpful. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm not the center of this. Like I still need to be paid, you know?
I agree. I think it's just that we have to make that at first, I actually used to be like, okay, you're right. You are giving me that exposure. And because I had just entered this field, and I also felt that, okay, I need to be okay with them not paying me because yes, like okay, I've just entered, but then I just saw that this has become a trend. Like
Mm.
it's just not this particular organization or this particular person; it's everyone
Yeah.
because they think this is charity work.
Yeah.
And then my friends and everyone around me and people who I was working with, in terms of my page especially, they also started telling me that why aren't you asking them for money? Because this is
Yeah.
not something that okay, yes, you're passionate. And then now upright, like I tell brands that okay, like if you want to work with me, this is And brands actually take advantage of that. If you do a collaboration with them once for free, then they reach out to you again.
Yeah,
And then they think that, okay, it's going to be for free again. And then they'll reach out again that, okay, this is going to be free. But now I think like now I've started like drawing boundaries because
yeah.
I'm just like, no, like if you want to work with me, this is this
It's
is what I want. Yeah.
It's that whole thing of like, we can't continue helping other people until we help ourselves. Like, you put your oxygen mask on before you help your child. You've got to make sure that you're looked after in this field so that you can continue doing the work. Like, you're really important, and so are the climate educators. And I do think, like, not just brands, but also schools and like all this kind of thing, like, they do need to recognize that.
I think you phrased it in an extremely amazing manner. Like, I don't need to say anything further. Like you said, that if we don't help ourselves, like nobody else will help us. So you're
Yeah, completely.
completely right about that, yeah.
But the kids, though, you like bringing this kind of back to something a bit more positive. You were talking about like when you go, the kids like so amazing and they're really interested. Like, what kind of reception do you get from the children? They're generally very excited about it.
They are extremely excited about tree plantations because they're experiencing the impacts of smog firsthand. And tree plantation is a very easy concept. It's something that everyone can be a part of, and
Mm.
it's something that everyone can do, right? So
Yeah.
when we go for plantations, so it's very interesting and it's very cute to see all the kids because we often tell kids that, okay, if you plant a tree, then you are going to be responsible for that tree, and
Yeah.
you have to pick up on that tree as well.
Hmm.
Um, and like I mentioned, the school that we did the plantation with is called HSN, and we've planted 6,000 trees over there. Overall, like my company, we've almost planted 70,000 trees within Lahore.
That's amazing.
And we want to go even further.
Yeah.
Like we just don't want to stop with the tree plantations. But there are only two seasons for tree plantations in Lahore. One is from Feb till April, and because then it gets too hot, and then during the monsoon also you can plant trees. So this was sort of our last round of plantations, and the kids they were very excited, and they remembered how many trees I had planted, and they said, "Oh my God, like I'm going to take care of all the trees that I planted. I'm going to come and check up on the tree as well." And the school is also very interested in the green initiative part because what the school does is that the school gives them like bonus marks if
Mm.
they send if they tell their teachers that today I went and I checked up on the tree, and they tell how the situation is looking around. And so if a student will go and check up on his or her tree more than the other student, he or she gets bonus marks.
Mm.
So I think it really depends on the school as well. If the institution is interested in green initiatives and is interested in inculcating these values within the students, you can visibly see a difference in the students. If there was a school that wasn't interested, there's so many schools that are not interested in that manner.
Mm.
The students are not. They are also not interested in then these activities as well. But I think these activities are so important to build a local community,
Mm.
and it's the kids that will bring about a change. So it's
Yeah.
very very important to inculcate like these values within the kids. Also, another thing that we are focusing on in terms of the kids is that we often tell them which movies to watch. So we give them a list of like animated movies. Currently we're focusing a lot on the B movie,
Nice.
and we tell them that go and watch the B movie and tell us what you've learned. So that's also something that we're focusing on because we want people to resonate with the problem, and we want people to feel empathetic towards it, and that can only be done by storytelling. And because I put up reels of the kids when we do these plantations, so when I ask them that, hey, can I make your video, so they're very excited. They're like, yes. And then we we'll look at your page if you featured us or not. So that's like an incentivization system. They look for themselves in the videos. So I
Yeah.
think that's nice. Like you should do these things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like with kids, when it comes to like looking after things, it's like a pet or like a Tamagotchi. I don't know if you had those little robot things when you were a kid, like keep it alive. Um, Kids love that. Like they're really like they want things to thrive and they want to feel responsible for something. So I think that's a great way to get them involved as well. I wonder, do you recommend Wally as well? The robot who cleans up the planet?
I do, and that's going to be my next recommendation.
Nice.
So I think that for now we were talking a lot about the B movie, but next will definitely be Wally,
Nice.
because I think that um, when you tell them to watch these movies, they become more interested,
Yeah.
in the problem, and they react in a more positive manner. So that's
Yeah.
something that we're going to do, yeah.
Do you think so when we're talking about like people are interested, but it's just like a flash in the pan trend and whatever, like, do you think there's a way we could get people more interested in sustainability in a more sustainable manner, so more long term?
Um, yes, I think the only way is that, we have to make a shift away from the guilt and towards storytelling and solutions,
Okay.
because that is something that is going to work in, 2025. People need to see themselves reflected in sustainability. There's a certain set of bloggers, like sustainable bloggers that we all follow. Like I often see that you include storytelling in your posts and how you relate it to you and your husband. So
Yeah.
I think how these things are extremely important, because how if you don't humanize the experience, people won't be interested in that problem. Like, so I think it's extremely important to humanize what you are talking about,
Mm.
and the relatability part is very, very important, and that's what I also try to do in my videos and in the information that I'm providing as well.
Yeah.
That I try to make it a human experience. I try to humanize it, and I try to do like a storytelling experience. So in Pakistan, for example, sustainability might look like ancient water harvesting techniques or women-led composting initiatives in different cities. So it's just not solar panels and green tech. It's like community resilience that we need to focus on. It's the stories of the communities who are impacted the most, culture, wisdom, and collective action. And when I talk about collective action, I talk about, plantations and everything. And it's very important to highlight these community stories as well. So the plantations that we did in a school, the alumni of that school, they all raised money, and they all came up with the solution that we want to give back to our school. So it's stories like these that we need to put out. So we also need to make it like hopeful and
Yeah.
positive, because constant doom scrolling doesn't motivate, it generally just paralyzes. And if we can highlight the stories of people taking action, especially at the local level,
Yeah.
and especially of youngsters, we'll start to build like a sense of possibility. And of course we need to speak in people's languages. Urdu
Mm.
is so I think I'm also guilty of the fact that I make most videos in English, and this is something I constantly think about, that I need to start making videos in Urdu as well,
It's hard to
because
post in two languages, though. It is difficult. Like I empathize with you there.
exactly, yeah. But
It's
like
really-
it is my cultural language, so I sometimes do think about it. But because I want to focus with my page, I want to focus on international
yeah.
audience as well. So that's why I keep it to English. But a lot of people understand English in Pakistan as well. But Urdu is a language that they're more comfortable with. And then I sometimes think about what about a mixture of both. But then I'm just like, okay, no, like I don't think I can do this. But yes,
Yeah.
I think utilizing the language is also something that's very important, because this issue is so important. So if I want more people to be interested in sustainability, this is something that I think I also definitely will have to think about, that I need to like make it localized in my own language, and towards like my culture. And if we want the movement to grow, it has to be familiar, right? It doesn't have to be foreign.
I agree with all of that. I think that I noticed something happening in the UK when we reintroduced beavers. I don't know if you saw the news about this. It was like a very niche UK thing, but like basically they reintroduced beavers to this park in the south of the UK and rewilded them. And we haven't had beavers here for like however many years, like I think over 100 years. And people were so excited. They were like, oh my God, like beavers. And I saw people sharing the news like all over their stories. And like there was this real sense of like excitement. And I think that's because of a few reasons. Like, firstly, it's positive, and we don't see much positive news these days. Like, we
Yeah.
mostly see doom and gloom. And secondly, it's local, so they know these animals, like they've seen them, like but they haven't ever seen them in the wild. And thirdly, it makes an impact to like their direct lives. Like it's something they can understand because beavers are really good for the environment. They like create dams and they stop flooding and things like that. So they can visually imagine how it will affect them. And I think all of those three things that you said kind of came together in that one thing. And if we get people understanding, like on a local level, you're affected by this and you can make a difference. Like it's not all doom and gloom. That's the answer,
Exactly.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. We just need to highlight more positive stories, and we need to make it a more like humanizing experience when it comes to,
And the humanizing thing too is really important, I think, for travelers because when travelers go to these kind of communities, like they are going to be visually seeing, in some cases, like the effect of climate change on communities. Sometimes they're just going to be connecting with people around the world, and that's a very impactful tool for like wanting to do things that have a global impact, let's say.
impact.
Yeah, you sort of stop thinking about just your own little bubble, I think, when you visit other places. And you start thinking about like how this is affecting everybody. So the human element is like really, really important, I think.
I agree. It's extremely important because I think now it's a time and it's the era to be more vulnerable and to actually show your audience and the users what you are feeling and what sort of impact that you want to make. It's time to tell your story, why you started it. So for all of that to come together, it's extremely important to that you're able to relate to the audience, and you can only relate if you are raw in your emotions, in your story, and if you actually put your story out there. So that's why I think humanizing it and storytelling is a very important tool in today's day and age.
Yeah, completely agree. So when we're talking about like people traveling, what does this phrase sustainable travel mean to you? Like, do you think people can travel sustainably, and if so, how?
Of course, I think so. For me, sustainable travel personally means traveling mindfully.
Yeah.
I think in Pakistan, if I'm talking about Pakistan, that could mean like choosing locally owned guest houses
Mhm.
over big hotel chains, respecting like local traditions and environment, and reducing your impact as you move through different places.
Mhm.
Um, it's also about asking, am I giving back to the place? Am I giving back to the country? Or am I just like, taking from it? Whether it's like the mountains of Hunza or Savat or the beaches of Gavadir. Sustainable travel truly, means like protecting the places you love so that the future generation can experience them too. And it's not about perfection. It's honestly about intention, right?
Yeah.
And that's what everything is truly about. It's about intention. If you have good intentions, good things will come by, and you should be mindful of everything because I also feel that traveling shapes up your personality,
Mhm.
and traveling shapes your experiences, and it changes you, it shapes your thinking. So it's very important to travel in a manner that is mindful and in a manner that will shape your experiences in a mindful manner.
Yeah.
So that's what sustainable travel means to me,
That's a
to do
lovely
everything.
answer.
Yeah,
Like making sure that you give back rather than take away, I think is something everybody should think about.
yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
So, Mahin, that's kind of all my questions. I just want to ask, what are you working on at the moment and where can people find you?
So I think people can find me on Instagram. My username is Ecomind Mahin, and my company's name is Carbon Wise Pakistan. I'm very accessible. You can reach out to me on my page. You can also email me. So currently, I'm working on everything that is related to Pakistan. I'm working on the carbon footprint calculator. We want to build a community. We want to get as many people on board as possible. And if you're someone also who's working in the green space and wants to collaborate with us and wants to partner with us, please feel free to like message us and connect with us because it's we want to build a community at the end of the day, and it's something that we all need to put our heart into, and we only have one planet. So let's all come together and let's all become a part of the change.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely love that. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Mahin. I'll just wrap up. This has been the Sustainable Travel Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at the Sustainable Travel Podcast, or we're also on my website, which is thattravel.co.uk. If you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much.